I'm Ron Trevino. Latino voters could make a big impact in November. It's a diverse, unique voting bloc with a wide range of opinions and positions, which is why Marcelino, Benito, and Maria Aguilera sat down to talk with a group of Latinos about the issues important to them and how they plan to use their power come Election Day.
Thank you all for joining us today. You guys are all here obviously because this is an important election and you guys are all part of a very important voting bloc here in Texas and really nationally. The Latino vote will be very significant this election. So we appreciate all of your voices and you being with us today. So the question for all of you, who among you plans to vote this November? Show of hands. All right, everybody. Well, I'm curious. You're not...
I'm undecided.
Okay.
I just haven't decided on any candidate. I'm not sold on any of them. So I just don't know at this point.
Okay. So you don't even know at this point if you will vote at all?
Correct.
Yes, I am voting, but I'm not sure if I'm going to vote in the presidential race. So in a way, I'm undecided as well.
How many times have you all voted? If you all just can kind of shout out the number of elections.
For presidential?
Yeah, presidential elections.
Okay. I think I voted 3 times in the presidential election.
This is actually going to be my first presidential election. The first election that I voted in was the state election.
4 times.
3 times.
Who is going to be voting for the very first time this presidential election?
Sí, demócrata.
No, la primera vez que vamos a...
Sí, la primera vez.
¿Y cómo se sientes sabiendo
Bien.
que es la primera vez?
Excelente. Excelente.
Nerviosos, pero...
Dígame eso de nuevo.
Digo, como nerviosos porque vamos a aprender por primera vez. Vamos a aprender cómo votar, pues para elegir.
I'm excited. I'm also nervous. I feel like this election is probably one of the most polarized that I've seen in my lifetime. I'm super excited to vote, but I do think that there's just a lot at stake.
So now who here is under 30? So 12 million Latinos will be eligible to vote who are under 30 in this election in November. And now young Latino voters are increasingly identifying as independent. Why do you think that is? And does anybody here feel that way?
I think I feel that way. I identify as a Democratic Socialist, but I think most part I voted Democrat. Unfortunately, I don't feel like the party or really either parties are doing what they say that they're going to be doing for our communities. But I think in terms of like actual policy that comes back and impacts my family and the families that are represented here and many others in Texas, I don't think that that's happening.
Jesselie, do you identify as an independent voter or a swing voter, or are you pretty locked in one way or the other?
No, I am a Democratic voter.
And can I just add, I'm not under 30, but I'm not too far away from it. I also think it's a lack of identification with our representatives, our senators, the candidates. We do not see Latinos at the population percentage of that we occupy in Houston, in Texas, nationally. That is super not represented at the legislative level.
The next question is who you guys plan to vote for president. So I'll ask you by candidate and then show of hands. So who here, by show of hands, plans to vote for Kamala Harris for president?
I'm kind of like halfway.
Well, I'm going to get to that in 1 second. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Who here plans to vote for Donald Trump? I want to go back to you, Raquel. You said you're 50. What's keeping you from going 100 in on either one?
I think it goes back to right now identifying as who we are as a culture, as a Latina, especially economically, the challenges that we have seen and that we've had to face even as a business owner. And I do feel like both parties have significantly failed us in many different ways. And at the same time, I'm very conflicted being a woman because I see the challenges that we're facing. And so I kind of like halfway agree with Republican, halfway agree with Democrat.
I did just want to add, to what you're saying, right? I think a lot of the things that she shared resonate with me a lot. You know, the status quo of both political parties in the federal government, in the White House, haven't really changed anything. It's been just this constant benefit for few wealthy people and not the working class, not the middle class. So, you know, I think until I see some really strong, brave choices from leadership, I don't think I'm giving them my vote.
Jennifer, you mentioned off the top you were undecided, or maybe
Yes.
not even considering not
Correct.
voting at all.
Correct.
What do you need to hear? What does a voter like you need to hear to get you in the game?
Actually, I just don't know. I don't believe in the whole politics in itself because I feel like politicians will sell you. This is what they're going to do in office. This is what they plan. They have this whole plan, the 100-day plan. And then when they get in office, it doesn't happen.
Latinos are a crucial voting bloc, especially this election. In the last presidential election, just in Texas, about 84% of Latinos voted, and that's like about 23% of the total voters. Do you all think that in this election, it will be more or less because of the issues right now at hand?
I think this election is very different also. We have a man that's been convicted of felonies running for president. That would have been throw him out a couple years ago. To me, this election's more about character than it is anything who tells the truth. If somebody doesn't tell you the truth, you have to doubt everything they say.
I want the Republican among us to be able to respond. I mean, you
Sure.
obviously, I assume, have different.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So there are a couple of things. I guess being the lone representative of that voice here, it's not necessarily indicative, though, of trends that we're seeing in Texas or nationwide. We're seeing that there actually is a bit of a shift, a cultural shift, if you will, of more Hispanics that are voting Republican. But the fact of the matter is, for Hispanic communities, actually, overall, they benefited from President Trump's economic policies. In fact, during Trump's administration, median household for Hispanics overall reached over $50,000 for the first time. Also, small business creation was led by Hispanics under Trump's tenure. So we had a flourishing of Hispanic entrepreneurs, small business owners. And I think the fact that we're seeing this crippling inflation, this crippling economy, people want to get back to the ability to be able to achieve the American dream.
So some of you touched on this a little bit during our previous questions. What are some of the most important issues for you all, especially this election?
We can start down here and make our way.
I think reproductive rights is a really important one.
The number one issue for me, being a first-generation Latina, is the topic of immigration.
For me, it would have to be reproductive rights as well.
Number one would be border security, and then the other one would be foreign policy.
Raquel, top issues.
Economy is definitely one. Of course, immigration is another one.
Top issues.
Border security.
Más importantes, pues, que traigan mejores cosas para toda la comunidad.
Para usted, ¿cuáles son los temas más importantes?
No, pues lo mismo, que todo venga mejor para todos y pues nosotros ya tenemos como 40 años aquí de residentes y ya cambiamos, somos ciudadanos y estamos puestos para votar y para cada que se les ofrezca. Muchas gracias por las invitaciones que nos han hecho y estamos con ustedes, somos grupo de ustedes.
So I'd like, Jennifer, if you could elaborate a little bit more about what concerns you. What concerns you about the economy right now, and do you think things are headed in the right direction?
I don't think they're headed in the right direction. I consider myself middle class. I don't make six figures, but I'm not I'm not in the low income. So I'm like right in the middle. And you're right in the middle, you don't qualify for benefits, but you don't make enough to do all of the extras. So we have to live on a budget, and groceries have now gone, a simple grocery that could last a week before, or like, during COVID, even during COVID,
I could get groceries for about $150. It would last me about a whole week. I want to be able to know that I can pay my mortgage, that I can pay my insurance, and I can pay my car, and I can get to work without having to worry gas is going to be $100 this week.
As someone maybe on this side, or you, sir, who is planning to vote for Kamala Harris, do you believe the country is heading in the right direction economically?
So I think it's hard because I think we love to blame one party, one person, one thing. Inflation is so much more complex than one party. So it's, and I think to think the president can snap their fingers and like, hey, I'm going to raise the prices, or hey, I'm going to lower. I think it's not as easy as that.
I hear this constantly of like, oh, gas prices, and it's like, that's because that's what you're hearing and that's what's being perpetuated in the media. But like when you actually sit down and become educated on how the economy actually works and what aspects affect the economy, you come to terms with the fact that like, oh, the president actually doesn't have that much say-so in how the economy is going to flow, especially over a 4-year period.
I grew up in an age where there wasn't social media when I was younger, and then when I went to school, social media was around. So I imagine for you growing up and being part of voting in many elections before social media was even around, how do you think social media has impacted the future of our democracy?
I love it, but at the same time, I'm very suspicious of it. You don't know what to believe, and I don't know how we live without our cell phones.
It's technology, and social media is a really amazing tool for us to access and create and to share, good videos and information. But I think it's also when we think about the interests and also who is able to make sure that the information that's out there is good and it's not, distorted.
Now, just with a show of hands, and I will ask this in Spanish, voy a hacer unas preguntas para nada más que levante la mano si piensa que es verdad o no es verdad. La pregunta primera va a ser si piensan que el país está dividido, ¿ok? Y voy a hacer la pregunta en inglés. Who here believes that the U.S. is divided? Okay. Y la siguiente pregunta es, ¿piensa que los latinos están divididos? Who here believes that Latinos are divided? And then now the last question for you to raise your hands. Do you have any fears or concerns if the candidate who you were planning to vote for does not win?
Immigration and border security mentioned by several of you. And the Latino community, polling shows surprisingly divided on different policies and how best to go about it. So I want to go to the Republican here. I'm curious, as a Latino, what is your take on plans like mass deportation as a Latino?
I want to give a bit of a frame of reference just to sort of contextualize to where I stand on this issue. So my family is originally from Venezuela. Venezuela is right now undergoing the world's largest mass exodus. A lot of the folks that are coming from Venezuela to neighboring countries, whether they be over in the Andean region, in Chile and Argentina, they speak the same language, but the burden is sometimes on the strain of public resources.
18% of Latinos in the United States actually support the policy of mass deportation. So overwhelmingly, Latinos seem to be against that. 50% of Latinos in the country support a path to citizenship for dreamers. 50% support cracking down on human smuggling and drug trafficking. 46% support providing a path to citizenship for migrants who have been here a long time, regardless of how they came. 35% support increased border security. Only 20% support building the wall or finishing the wall. And again, 18% support mass deportation. So all of us are Latinos here. And I want to ask the person who's not committed, who's sort of 50-50, okay? As a Latina, what do you feel and what do you think about comments made by the former president describing immigrants as poisoning the blood of our country, and just the rhetoric with which he discusses a community like ours?
I think it's a mistake to generalize an entire population.
Does the rhetoric turn you off as a voter?
Yeah, it makes me concerned. I don't like being And I think that's why we feel like as Latinos or Latina, like we don't matter because we're all of a sudden thrown into this pool of doing something wrong. And it's that term, it's not bad to be an immigrant. It's the illegal part that makes it different. I think people also get mistaken by that. There was a table to register immigrants for voting, and you saw a group of people who were angry about that, but they had a misconception that actually these were legal immigrants that are here in this country. So I think the term immigrant has associated with this negative thing, and it's not. It's actually a beautiful thing. It's what the foundation of our country was built on.
Another one of the issues is reproductive rights. So abortion, 65% of Latinos strongly or somewhat agree, and that's in Texas, that's according to polling, agree that it's wrong to take a woman's reproductive choice away. So in a show of hands, who here, in a show of hands, is in favor of abortion rights?
I'm like here with it.
You're always here.
Well, I am.
Yeah.
But
Okay. And now who here, ¿quién aquí está en contra de? Who here is against it?
Kind of in the same.
I'm like here.
Yeah.
I'm here
So
with it.
dive into that briefly.
It's my body, my business. Just like when everybody had a COVID vaccine, it was your body, your business, right? Everybody, either Republican or Democrat, it was your choice to get a COVID vaccine. And then at one point it was a mandate and everybody had to get it. But at the same time, I'm Catholic. And so, I think it's hurtful for me. I had actually, gone partially through IVF to try to, I didn't know I was going to be able to have children. And so I think that's also something that I'm very passionate about. I believe in that right. But I think what it comes down to is it is upsetting to hear stories on the other extreme side where there is women who may have 3 or 4 abortions.
And when it comes to Latinos, religion can sometimes be viewed as part of the culture. And we've seen data shows that born-again Christians or Christianity, those who identify with that religion, are overwhelmingly against abortions, while those who are Catholics, even Catholic Latinos, are more evenly split, while non-religious Latinos are overwhelmingly in support of abortion. Es un motivo grande para las personas que creen o no en el aborto. Who here believes that religion plays a role when it comes to abortion?
52% of Latinos in this country say they have had no contact with a campaign, with a candidate, no election-related contact. Raise your hand, show of hands, if you have received some sort of communication from a campaign or a candidate. So for anyone that has raised their hand, maybe Marla, for example, do you believe the Latino vote is taken for granted?
Yes.
Tell me why.
There's a lot of conversation and talk in the airwaves about, what we can do with our vote, and what are the issues that matter to us. And I think a lot of the times what is portrayed is that we're divided or that we don't agree, but we agree on a lot of things. And it's that we want the ability to thrive. We want our rights respected. And then on top of that, whenever we do exercise our vote, the things that we're asking for, that everybody's asking for, not just Latinos, aren't being met.
Yes, I think that our vote is taken for granted. I think that historically a lot of politicians, they cater towards where the vote is at, and historically, sadly enough, the Latino community has had low voter turnout. But I think that can be attributed to a lack of education. I was born in Northside, Houston, which has one of the highest populations of Latinos, and I think that if politicians and people on these campaigns actually went to these areas and spoke about what this election process would look like, I think that the voter turnout would be immensely different. And I can attest to that because of what happened in Denver Harbor when we started going out and block walking and knocking on people's doors and letting them know about their polling stations. There was a 3 times the amount of voter turnout than it had been in the years prior.
What role do you see the Latino vote having this election?
Actually, I think the majority of the young vote is actually Latino, right? So when you speak about the young vote, it's hand in hand with the Latino vote. So it's absolutely important.
Rafael, I'm curious, have you always identified as a Republican your entire life?
Actually, no. I identified as a Democrat in high school.
So as someone who started on the other side and has sort of transitioned, I want to get your take on this one. Why do you think Latinos are no longer that reliable voting bloc for Democrats that they once were?
So I think it's a couple of things. Number one, I think that there's been a little bit of pandering from the Democratic Party. I think you mentioned earlier something that I wholeheartedly agree with. Identity politics doesn't really work with the Hispanic community because we identify with our culture, and our culture is not necessarily monolithic, right? So voters from Venezuela or Venezuelan Americans may not think the same way as Mexican Americans or Chilean Americans or Brazilian Americans. So I think that outreach, uniformly, we will all be in agreement that that outreach, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, is very, very important. It's paramount to really understanding where those nuances are because we are a very nuanced voting bloc. I think the other issue is that the Republican Party in recent years has become more worker focused. I mean, the fact that you had the CEO or the head of Teamsters show up at the RNC, I think speaks to a little bit of a shift going on in the Republican Party where there is much more of a prioritization of blue-collar middle-class workers, many of whom just happen to be Hispanic. And I think that a lot of the prosperity that I mentioned earlier that happened during the Trump years for the Hispanic voter, whether it was median household increasing across the board above 50,000 per year, or if you had low record unemployment, or if you had, for example, small business owners and having the Hispanic community be at the forefront of small business creation in the country, not only does that achieve that American dream that so many of us want for us and for our children after us, I think it also is it's important to recognize, I think, for the Democratic Party that we're not just a one-trick pony, right? We don't just care about immigration. There are a lot of issues that we've talked about across the board today that exercises like this become really, really important for us to flesh out. And I think that's the first step in solving that problem, just recognizing that there is one.
What are one or two things that you all feel you wish candidates, political campaigns knew about the Latino vote, you as a voter, that they don't know in terms of how they reach out and try to connect and earn your vote?
Just that we're not all the same. We're different. But we all just want better for our future.
I think the number one thing I would say to them is to stop homogenizing us. I think that the Latino community is so diverse and there's so much beauty in our diversity. And a lot of times, especially in Texas, it's just like Mexicans. No, we're a very diverse group. And I think that needs to be acknowledged more. And I think that if they catered their policies or even just the way that they reach out to us in that way and they acknowledged our diversity, that they would see a big difference in turnout altogether and just willingness to be a part of the political process.
Probably the top thing for me is realizing that more Latinos are U.S. born. More and more Latinos are being born in the U.S. So it's this idea that we are all of us are the first generation immigrants that came here. It's just not true anymore. More people are identifying as Latino.
So it's going to be a fusion of the last two answers because there are two really, really great points that were made. Number one, it's true. The fact of the matter is that now Hispanics make up a slight majority, but a majority nonetheless of the general population here in the state of Texas. We're the second largest voting bloc in the United States, which means that our vote, our voice is that much more important than it ever has been for any previous election. It's important to recognize that we pay bills just like everybody else. We care about our families just like everybody else. And so 9 times out of 10, those priorities are going to be the same as your average American voter. That being said, appreciate the nuances, and like my fellow Ricel said, don't homogenize because there's beauty in the different types of experiences, the cultural ones that we bring. I didn't see not once in either the VP debate or in either of the presidential debates that took place any discussion on Latin America, not one. And it's disappointing because a lot of the folks that are now coming to the United States, our families are from there. And if you want to be able to properly extract the root cause and identify what's going on with these countries, it's important to at least have a general layman's understanding. And I think that our communities will appreciate it across the board if they can recognize it, make that effort, and show that we ultimately, at the end of the day, kind of do beautifully weave into the tapestry that is the American political process.
They're all right. Yeah, but to me, they've always ignored us, and we have to do the work ourselves. We've proven that in Denver Harbor, where we knocked on every door in the neighborhood, put out flyers, had meetings, go to visit people, try to get them registered to vote, and it worked.
I think we are underestimated, and I think that we're coming in like a tsunami now. I think that the population, as we know it, they say I think by 2050 will probably be majority Latino. So I think, we're going to actually be very genuinely surprised. I am grateful to see more participation on both sides. I would love to see more Latino participation in voting, because we need to understand through the educational systems, and that's the part of the advocacy that I think we need is starting in the schools, so that we can educate our youth so that they can have a voice, because our voice does matter. And I think that on both sides, and for so long, just our power and of our influence in this economy in itself has always been underestimated, but I don't think not for much longer.
We really, really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today and being so open. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos hoy.
Muchas gracias por sus invitaciones.
All of you have a lot of power as Latinos, and I hope you realize that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
We built the